So the Essential Oil Specialist Certification Program, a program advertised and marketed as being only $97, a program that people normally pay hundreds or thousands of dollars for. So hi, my name is Jessie. I'm an aromatherapist by training, and I am that person that paid hundreds or thousands of dollars for certification. And I've also taken the Essential Oil Specialist Certification Program. So in this video, I'll be talking about the EO Specialist Program by doTERRA and compare it with my formal education in aromatherapy and my certification program. So I'm hoping this will be helpful for you guys. And also, if you guys have any questions during this, there'll be a Q&A, question and answer period at the end. So feel free to ask questions as we go along, and I will check it out at the end. So if you're watching the replay, you can play this on double speed just to get through this video faster, because this is unedited. But the different sections we'll be going over is: one, I'll be comparing the time it takes comparing my essential oil certification program with the Essential Oil Specialist Certification Program. I'll be comparing subjects covered. I'll be talking about a review, what I liked about the EO Specialist Certification, review what I did not like. I'll be comparing some safety guidelines, and also I'll be mentioning some other safety guidelines to consider, as well as addressing potentially false info. So, quick disclaimer, well, a few disclaimers, but one is this is not actually a certification program to become an aromatherapist. So if you are wanting that to become an aromatherapist, essential oil specialist is not that. Technically, if you do the program, I believe you can use the essential oil specialist trademark, but remember, this is a trademark. This is not necessarily, an actual job, or like an actual, how do I say this, profession like aromatherapy is. So let's do some other quick disclaimers. Again, this is my personal opinion. I am not your aromatherapist. And I want to say quickly about this whole French versus English aromatherapy. I see a lot of MLMers talk about them using the French model. I see a lot of aromatherapists saying that the French aromatherapy doesn't exist, or that they don't really adhere to that or agree with that. I have a whole opinion on this because I do speak French, I do speak English. So if you want to get more in depth about what my views are on this, feel free to check out the link down below where I talk about French aromatherapy, MLMs, and aromatherapists, and how that all influences the way I use oils. So if you want to dive into it, feel free to, but it's not a huge deal if it's not something that interests you. Because for me, I personally gear between, I'm how do I say this? I do believe that there's a balance between what a lot of conservative aromatherapists say and what some unsafe practices promoted by MLMers are. So I'm somewhere in between. So if you want to go into that, definitely feel free to check out that video. But the first comparison that I'm going to make is how much time does it take? So for me, when I did my program, it was a 600-hour program, which I swear I think I did over 1,000 hours, but that's what it was marketed as a 600-hour program. That's to become an aromatherapist. At my level, it's a level 3, but you'll see varying levels, varying amounts of hours per program. So some other ones that you'll see to be an aromatherapist might be a minimum of 50 hours for a NAHA level 1 aromatherapist, minimum 200 hours for a level 2, minimum 300 hours for a level 3. That's an aromatherapist. But for the Essential Oil Certification Program, that is actually 34 minutes and 48 seconds, not even an hour. So I just want you guys to really take that in and realize that there's not a lot you can cover in 35 minutes versus like a 600-hour program, which I did. That's a quick comparison of hours. Next, I'm going to talk about some subjects covered and an overview. I'm looking down at my notes so I don't forget anything. So doTERRA, I found it to be super basic in the sense that it talks about, hey, you can use essential oils topically, aromatically, and of course they talk about internally, because that's something that a lot of MLM essential oil MLMs talk about, like Young Living and doTERRA. A lot of times they promote internal. They sort of talk about pregnancy and nursing, kids, animals, medications and stuff like that, epilepsy. but I find some of the information they share to be a little bit questionable, or I do kind of wonder where their sources are, but that's okay. Like I said, it's super basic. It's not enough to really grasp safe essential oil usage. And I feel that they use a lot of vague terms like, by using safety guidelines, you'll be able to use essential oils confidently. But then what are these safety guidelines? After taking this course, just basing it on the course I've taken, I don't really see that. I don't really see what these safety guidelines really are. Where, as my certification program, we go over essential oil profiles, we go over botany, chemistry, possible drug interactions, special safety guidelines or specific safety guidelines. We do case studies on people. So we have people who are volunteers that we see what kind of health issues they have. We make a blend for them. And then we practice on them, I guess, as a client. We learn about pathology, dosage, specific dilution rates for different concerns, depending on how long we're going to be using the product, how short, who are we using it on. And yeah, just a lot of more specific things. But I guess with 35 minutes, is it 35 minutes? Yeah, with 35 minutes, I don't know how much detail doTERRA could really go in with just the time that they have. And I'm going to be answering, I'll be answering questions at the very end, I think. But actually, this one seems pretty good. Relatable to right now. So how widely are you recognized as an aromatherapist, like in which countries, to which level, etc.? Okay, I guess I didn't talk about that, so I will say. So my program, like I'd mentioned, it is 600 hours. I've taken a program that is recognized by a handful of organizations, two of them being NAHA, so the National Association of Holistic Aromatherapy, and Alliance of International Aromatherapists. So those are the two well-known ones all across the world. It would be the highest level in both. So NAHA level 3, AIA the highest level, but then of course with NAHA, if you are an aromatherapist, then it's like you start at level 2, even if your program's level 3, until you've done a year of practice to fully have that level 3 status. I'm hoping that makes sense. Let me know if it doesn't. So next thing I'll be comparing is, I have a lot of things to go through. So next one is review what I liked. So what I liked about the essential oil specialist certification. And I mean, I guess I like that they had general info compiled how to use essential oils. So if somebody has essential oils and they're like, oh, like, is it just to put in a diffuser? You can learn that actually you can use them in an aromatherapy inhaler, which I have a whole playlist on if anyone wants to know about. Oh, you can use like an aromatic steam inhalation, or you can use it as a like topically, like on your skin or whatnot. So I kind of like that they did have general information for people who are like really lost. And like I said, I liked that I guess it could help a beginner essential oil user understand the basics of essential oils. They can use it aromatically, topically on your skin, etc. I did like, which I was really surprised about that they even said this, because I don't see this among MLM users. They said bathwater is not a carrier oil, which I was like, yes, thank you. Water and essential oil don't mix, right? So they don't dilute it. So they encourage you to use a carrier oil before putting essential oils in your bath, which I'm 100% on board on, or to mix it with a body wash, they said, which I like that they mentioned it. However, they also did say that you could mix it with Epsom salt. That's not really something that we go with as aromatherapists. Salts don't really dilute your essential oils. So that was a little bit like, I don't agree with that. But I like that they did say to dilute when using it in your bath. I liked, this is going to be a little controversial because I know internal usage of essential oils is really controversial. You'll see a lot of aromatherapists. Some of them will say never do it. Some will say only if you're being supervised by a doctor. But they did talk about it internal usage. And I like that they did say to use a toothpick of essential oils in cooking. They didn't say to put multiple drops in, which is something that I do see in France when I've seen different like aromatherapy professionals in France talk about essential oils. They have talked about using a toothpick rather than just dropping drops. which was kind of impressive. Again, do your own safety research. If you ever decide to use essential oils internally, it's going to be up to you to, seek the proper professionals or do your own research. I'm not your aromatherapist. I'm not encouraging it, but I am talking about it. And what I did like is that they said not all essential oils are safe for children if you're taking different kind of meds. I like that, but on the other side, what I didn't like is that they gave really vague safety information. So they're like, it's not safe for everyone, but they don't say what's not safe for kids. And and something I have noticed is that, like, for example, they say not all essential oils are safe for kids, but they have a kids line with different essential oils that are not really recognized as being safe for kids, according to aromatherapist. So it's like, you're saying that, but what you're doing is kind of questionable as well. I mean, of course, maybe they're using those essential oils that are unsafe for kids in safe dilution rates, but I really don't know. I've contacted them in the past and said, hey, can you tell me the dilution rate of this essential oil blend? Because I thought, well, if it's diluted to this amount, I know that it could be technically safe for kids. But they said they would not because it's proprietary information. I personally think it's safety information. So it's kind of, yeah, it's like they say it's not safe for everyone, but they don't give specifics. And like I said, they have a lot of vague safety usage. So this is kind of something I don't really like, which we're going to go into. Review things I didn't really like. They give a lot of vague safety usage. So like I mentioned, they'll say, once you've consulted safety guidelines, you can use essential oils safely. Or you can use essential oils confidently once you know safety guidelines. But like I said, what are these safety guidelines? Exactly. What are the safety recommendations? This is not shared in their certification program. Another thing I don't like is they've said with pregnancy, in their pregnancy module, their pregnancy video, they said that extra dilution is advisable in pregnancy. But like I said, what does that really mean? Okay, so as an aromatherapist that has been trained in North America by associations approved by example like NAHA or AIA, we learn or we're encouraged to only use like a 1% dilution rate with pregnant women, where I feel like this could be misleading because a lot of people who are, let's say with doTERRA, will say, well, you're supposed to dilute a little more, extra dilution, super vague. Could they be using actually maybe 75% dilution rate or 50% dilution rate, whereas aromatherapists will say 1%. Another thing that I disliked about this program would be that I am kind of worried this would give a false sense of security. Like I said, it's super vague. It talks about using essential oils, but it doesn't really say specific safety guidelines except to like follow them, even though we don't really know what they are. And another thing that I kind of dislike, but I understand why they do it because I say the same thing. They say consult consult your healthcare provider or pharmacist if you're pregnant or on meds, which I will address later at the end of this video a little bit more why this kind of is like, I'm not sure how I feel about this advice, even though I say it, but I'll get into detail why I am a little bit like, Another one is I wish I could read my rating. I'm stuck here. Okay, that's okay. I actually can't read that. Next, we will be comparing some safety guidelines. So I'll be comparing a little bit what this MLM trading shares, essential oil specialist certification versus my original aromatherapy certification program. And again, like I said, sometimes I find myself in the middle because I am French speaking and I do consult French speaking sources. Again, feel free to check out my video down below where I compare where I find myself between the really conservative aromatherapist guidelines versus the MLM guidelines. I'm somewhere in between there. So first thing, comparing some safety guidelines, I'm going to talk about dilution. So dilution is when you have an essential oil and you dilute it in like a carrier oil, such as like fractionated coconut oil. In my training, aromatherapy certification training, we dilute a lot more And we have specific guidelines depending on what we're using it for. And just to give you an idea, some of them are like, we use it at 1% for like pregnancy and stuff like that, 3% if it's like a long-term issue, 5% when it's kind of more short-term. There's a lot more dilution rates we use, which I will tell you to if you want to see all the details to go down below. I have a link of my Instagram where I talk about the different dilution rates and what we use it for in generally. Whereas doTERRA, they talk a lot about the habitual neat usage of essential oils, meaning no dilution, that you can do it, that it's not a big deal on gentle oils, which is contrary to what we learn in aromatherapy studies. We are basically always diluting for the most part, except for like exceptional circumstances. And there still are aromatherapists who will never, ever, ever not dilute. So just to put that into context, their regular dilution guidelines at the essential oil specialist certification, like they say on their essential oil bottles, 1 drop per 3 to 5 drops of carrier oil, which works out to, if we calculate it per drop, it's 17 to 25% dilution rate. Again, very different than what I learned in my school, which is like 1%, 2%, 3%, 5%, 10% in like really short-term acute situations, right? So you're seeing a difference here. Next, we're talking about children, dilution rate still. In my personal training, we follow TISRIN's guidelines, which I will have a link down below that you can see which guidelines, which dilution rates for which ages. But if you look at like 3 months of age, we're looking at 0.25%, 0.5%, all the way to when they're older, like 6 to 15 years old, we're 1.5 to 3%. Whereas doTERRA, in their program, they will say 1 essential oil drop to 10 drops carrier, which works out to be 9%, which is usually like higher even for an adult from classic formal aromatherapy training. They also mention the doTERRA specialist program. They talk about how in nursing, elderly, pregnancy, with kids and stuff like that, they talk about diluting more without being specific, which again is kind of really vague. Like I said, there's a lot of like vague safety recommendations, but not specific. Second difference, internal usage. So for my program, we did not cover this in my program just because it's a really controversial thing. It's also not really, it's not approved for us to be using with our patients in North America. But I've talked to other aromatherapists on taking, I've talked to other aromatherapists that are open to it. And I'm also taking a different course on the internal usage of essential oils. And using essential oils, we use it a lot less dosage than it's encouraged in the essential oil special certification. So even if you are open to the ingestion of essential oils, which I know there's a lot of aromatherapists that are like, no, never, it still is less than what doTERRA is saying, which I think is pretty intense in my opinion. But I mean, this is just an observation. So doTERRA, so I'm trying to figure out which side to do. doTERRA recommends a lot more, like I'd say like maximum drops per day, like a good at least 3 times, 2 to 3 times more than what the maximum dosage would be from the courses I'm taking, talking about the internal usage of essential oils, which is kind of a lot. And even if you are taking internally, in like the program I'm taking internally, max dosage, it's a max dosage for a reason. This is not a habitual dosage. Whereas I feel like with the doTERRA certification, it's kind of like, oh, you can go up to here whenever. I don't know. It just doesn't seem as intentional as like real aromatherapy training. I don't mean to be judgmental and saying real aromatherapy training, but it is a real certification program to be an aromatherapist. Next, we're going to talk about children again, but differently. So for my aromatherapy training, we talk about the specifics of each essential oil. There are specific essential oils that are safe for children, specific that are not. And there's some that are generally unsafe, but you can find ways to use them safely if you have the know-how. Otherwise, you just avoid them. Whereas with the doTERRA certification, they just say, oh, just some aren't safe for children, just a generic phrase. And like I mentioned, there are some of their kids line products that I'm like, ooh, is that actually safe for kids? And they're not able to give me the information I would like to verify if I would be comfortable using it on children. Next, pregnancy. Again, my certification program, we talk about specific guidelines. We talk about these essential oils are known to be safe. These essential oils are known to be avoided. These essential oils you want to use caution with, possibly not ever use them. And then there's specific dilution rates. So like I mentioned, I did a whole video on this too as well, for those who want to check it out. But 1% dilution rate is generally the dilution guideline that we follow in my school, and generally with like, I think NAHA aromatherapists will be following. Whereas with the doTERRA certificate, this is where I'm going to talk about this. They say extra dilution, which I'm kind of like, what is extra dilution? Does it mean putting 1 or 2 more carrier oil drops? What does it actually mean? Really vague, general information. And then they say consult a healthcare practitioner, provider. And I'm going to explain a little bit why this bothers me, but I'll get into it a little bit further, I think. Why I don't really like this phrase, consult with a healthcare practitioner, consult with your pharmacist, even though I say it for legal reasons because people should consult, is that a lot of doctors, a lot of pharmacists do not have training in essential oils. I have personally seen or heard of different doctors saying, no, never use essential oils when you're pregnant. I've also heard and seen doctors say, oh, it's not a big deal. You can use what you want. There's no evidence to share that it's not. So that's why this whole phrase kind of bothers me, which I'll get into it at the very end, what my recommendations would be, or what my recommendations would be about consulting a physician or healthcare provider. Next, another difference is animals. So in my personal program, I did not learn about animals. So I have not learned about it. And then with the doTERRA certification, there is really vague information. They also give some basic guidelines that I would give in terms of like, let the animal like leave if they want to, or, you know, stuff like that. But I also don't know what their sources are. And there's some other information that doTERRA has provided that I'm like, I'm not sure if I agree with that. What are the sources? So I don't really know if I'd stand by what they're saying about animals, but they do talk about it. So something worth mentioning. Next. Okay, thank you. I just saw that Natasha said, yeah, it's clear. Thanks. Good. I'm glad it was helpful. And the next part I'm going to be talking about are mention of some safety points and false info. Okay. Again, I'll just kind of reiterate this fact that I speak English and French, so I see French resources, I see English resources, and I see that my aromatherapy certification program, what a lot of aromatherapists do, are pretty conservative. Not a bad thing, especially if you are, for liability reasons, working with patients. You want to be as conservative as you want, as you should, as you think, as you're comfortable with. I see also a lot of MLM practices that are really, some of them that are questionable, some that are straight out dangerous. I read French resources, which go a little bit in the middle. So I'm a little bit more liberal sometimes with my personal usage of essential oils. I want to be clear about that. Again, I have a link in the description talking about this a little bit more. So I don't think everything's black and white, but I am going to share with you my personal thoughts on some safety issues and things to consider if you do use essential oils and you are, especially if you've taken the EO specialist certification program. So 1, I heard them talk about if irritation lasts days or weeks or months. If you have a reaction that's lasting weeks or days or months, this is probably not just irritation. Okay? Usually irritation will subside within hours. Like if it's an allergic, or if it's an irritation reaction, if you're getting it for days, weeks, months, you're probably looking at a allergic reaction. So what we call sensitization. So this can happen for different reasons. But if you're using essential oils constantly, not diluted enough, constantly neat, your body could be developing a kind of allergic response. You don't see it right away all the time. Actually, I don't think you ever do see it right away. You may be using it neat on your skin, I don't know, 22 times, 99 times, 100 times, but it might be the 101 time that your body's like, hey, it's enough, and it goes into sensitizing. Like you become sensitized to an essential oil. When this happens, you might get to the point where you're never going to be able to use that essential oil again because you're sensitized, even if it is highly diluted. So I say if you get a reaction from essential oil, whether it be irritation that lasts hours or an allergic reaction, or you start to see that you're reacting to it, this is your time to really take a break, take a break, assess the situation, not constantly put more to get rid of the rash. Really consider, are you diluting enough? Should you be diluting it more so that you can use essential oil more sustainably, so you don't develop sensitization or a permanent allergic reaction to it. Anyways, that's my little it's my little speech about the irritation thing. If it's lasting days and months, weeks, it's probably not just a simple irritation. Next, I'm not a huge fan of dropping essential oil directly under your tongue. Neat. Not a huge fan of it. I understand sublingual usage is a thing, but again, disclaimer, this is really controversial because we're talking about internal usage of essential oils. Do your proper research to use it safely. But when I do it under my tongue, I'm heavily diluting it already. And I'll tell you what, 1% is still extremely effective. Just want to put that out there. Again, I'm not promoting the internal usage of essential oils. I'm just talking about it and bringing some light onto using it neat. If we don't use it neat internally, at least that's what I do not encourage people to do. Third, breastfeeding and pregnancy. Like I'd mentioned, they talked about diluting it more, a little bit more. What does that even mean? In my studies with NAHA, we follow the, oh my gosh, what is it? I think it's the IFRA, International Federation of Professional Aromatherapists guidelines of 1%. When you're pregnant, when you're breastfeeding, using 1% is generally what we do. I know French does it a little differently, but again, you have to do what's best for you and do your research. And not all essential oils are safe in pregnancy. When I was in the MLM space, I remember my upline telling me that there was just like one essential oil that is to be avoided in pregnancy. I've heard people say that there's only 3. This is actually not true. There are a lot of essential oils to be avoided in pregnancy and nursing. So I just want to put that out there. Please do your research. Find a reputable source from an aromatherapy professional. I don't want to be rude by saying this, but I would encourage you not to be looking to your upline in terms of safety questions. Not to be rude, but just usually, generally speaking, they're not educated and their motive is to sell. I've been in different training where they tell our downline to use more oils because it creates a sustainable business. So consult proper sources for your safety information. And breastfeeding, I'll talk about this. Just because an essential oil is safe in pregnancy or breastfeeding doesn't always mean it's safe for the baby. What I mean by this is that there are some essential oils that have safety concerns in terms of risk of respiratory distress, which can stop the baby or the young child to be able to properly breathe. A lot of times there are essential oils that are high in 1,8-cineol, menthol, so for example, like peppermint, a lot of the eucalyptuses that are high in 1,8-cineol. If you're breastfeeding, you have it around your breast, it could, I would say déclencher in French, but it can start a problem with respiratory distress. So just be aware that if it's not safe for a baby or a child, breathing wise, it probably is not a good idea for breastfeeding. And a way to use those, if you want to use essential oils that are not safe to be breathed in by babies or kids, but you want to use it for yourself, you can use an aromatherapy inhaler. It's a personal aroma stick. You get the benefits, but it's not dispersed for everyone else to smell. Again, I have a whole playlist. Feel free to check out Just Enter Life playlist, aromatherapy inhalers. And okay, I don't have this, but I'm going to be talking about the consult a doctor and pharmacist. Like I said, it's kind of a term that bothers me a little bit, but I say it for legal reasons, right? But I think, like I mentioned, not all doctors, most doctors have no knowledge about essential oils and safety around it. Some will say, oh, it's not a big deal. Some will say never use it for conditions that, they don't necessarily know. My best go-to advice would be to do your proper research, get good sources such as like, I don't know if you can see it, Essential Oil Safety Book by Robert Tisserand and Rodney Young, and find out what that information is for you. Present it to your doctor. So for example, if you're on certain kind of medications, you can say, hey, I know that these essential oils aren't good with this kind of medication. Are my medications these kind of medications? Are they metabolized by this enzyme? And then if so, you can kind of put your research together with what your doctor can help you with. So yeah, use a good reference, present that information to your doctor, combine it. So you have the knowledge with the knowledge of like pharmaceutical knowledge and whatnot of your doctor. That's my personal thing. I do think it's good to consult, a professional, but to just use that alone when they're not trained in aromatherapy or essential oils, it doesn't really make that much sense, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Another thing, false information. They talk about using essential oils on your feet. This is a huge MLM thing. This is what I learned when I was with like Young Living. This is what I was really promoted a lot when I was with doTERRA. But then when I became an aromatherapist, they said like, there's no talk of that. So I don't think it's right or wrong. I've seen aromatherapists say don't put essential oils on your feet, it's worthless. I've also seen French aromatherapists talk about it. So I have a whole article down below if you guys want to see the pros and cons, the fors and against of using essential oils on your feet. It's kind of a good read. I don't have a specific do it or don't do it, but I think it's good to educate yourself and decide what you think is best. So I'm going to be looking at questions. If you guys have questions, please ask them. Again, I will talk about coupon codes if anyone wants to use. Actually, maybe I shouldn't do this on that video because I am talking about doTERRA. Anyways, if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. And on the replay, there will be videos popping up of other things that you guys might like to check out. And I'll be waiting another about 20 seconds, 30 seconds to see if anyone has any questions because I know there is a delay. And I hope this was helpful for you guys. I'm just trying to stay as neutral as possible, even though I know some things might be bothersome to some people, but I just want to say it as I see it. And how I see it is not always how everyone else sees it. So I don't see any other questions, I don't think. So I want to wish you guys a lovely day. Take care and bye-bye.